number 5 in E flat major. This is a great invention. It's probably, of all the inventions, the most equally balanced for the two hands, right hand, left hand, or soprano and bass in this case. And what Bach does with this is to construct a 4-measure subject for one hand, and at the same time he's doing a 4-measure counter subject with the other hand. So they're going along simultaneously for the 4 measures, and then at the end of the 4-measure phrase they flip parts, they invert, and he goes to a new key area. I mean, this is just a spectacular bit of composing, and I can't wait to share this one with you now. So E flat major. Happy open key. And how does Bach give vitality? How does he give built-in momentum? How does he turn this into a tour de force, electrifying toccata piece? That's how I hear all of these things, and there are many elements we'll talk about. He's first of all exploring the tonality of the scales. So with our E flat major, he's using both directions on that scale. He's going ascending for the subject and descending for the counter subject. Interesting, isn't it? So how he does the subject is to start right after the first beat. This is in 4/4 time. And he starts 1 and 2 and 3, 4. The first measure starts on the tonic, E flat, and it goes up the 4 notes of the scale degrees. The next measure repeats the same pattern, but on the next scale degree, the F. And then the third measure starts on the expected next scale degree, but does another pattern, which I call part B. So the part A, the 2 measures, starts like this. Now the part B goes up a 4th and comes down with a little turn, a melody, and then skips up the triad. And that is where the next subject comes in, and he has modulated at this point to B flat major, and that is the dominant of the home key E flat major. And then the bass part, the left hand, does its 4-measure subject in the new key of B flat major, sounding like this in measure 5. Up a step to C. And here's your part B with the rising 4th. Now here, instead of doing the full octave like he did the first time, he lowers it by 1 note and goes up to an A flat. And that is a dominant 7 chord. And your ear knows it wants to pull to this resolution, and that's exactly what he does. He modulates back to the tonic. So each hand got to do the subject. The soprano voice got to do it in the tonic, and the bass voice got to do it in the dominant, and then they came back to the home key of E flat major. Now we're going to see what he does with the counter subject. And I have to tell you that this is the most thrilling counter subject that I've ever seen. It has so much to it. Remember, we are in 4/4 time, and after the first 2 quarter notes on the tonic in your left hand or the bass, it is non-stop 16th notes for the entire rest of the piece. And it goes almost, well, I won't say like the wind, but it feels that way when you're playing it, because you never get a break. Every 4 measures or every 3 measures, depending on if we have sequences, you're trading hands with those 16th notes constantly. So our idea of the counter subject now, measure 1, let's start again. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's stop right there. It's part A. Do you hear how he's giving us those as little... And all we need is this one. And he does give us that. Part B, and what always happens at the beginning of part B, that's measure 3 of all the counter subjects, we have a broken rising octave in the key area we're in. It's just splendid. So here is measure 3 with the rising E flat octave of the tonic. Now here he does a tremendous descending passage like this. Closer look at that. We have a series of what I call two-step patterns and leaping intervals. Let's first just take the two-step, and that's going to happen on every second and fourth beat. Here's the first beat of measure 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I just doubled that with this hand so you could hear it. The other beats 1 and 3 have these wonderful harmonies of intervals up the octave for beat 1. Here's the two-step. Here's beat 3 with the rising fourth, and then coming down, and the rising fourth, and the rising seventh. It's very beautiful. And what's so remarkable is when those subject and the counter subject come together, the intervals that they make on key beat notes work. And this is one of the most challenging things in composition of this type of writing counterpoint, is to write parts that sound nicely as separate parts, but then when you put them together, they work equally well. And let me show you what I mean by that. Here's measure 3 with the beginning of our part B. We have the rising fourth, as we know, in the subject, the rising octave, as we know, in the counter subject. And that is a 10th. And I'm going to call out these intervals. 10th, 6th, 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 10th, 6th, 6th, 10th. When the parts invert, those intervals are absolutely opposite. The 6th becomes a 10th, and the 10th becomes a 6th. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's take the part B now of measure 7 in our dominant key area of B flat major. Now we have the subject in the bass with the rising fourth, and because we're in B flat major, we have the B flat upward octave saying that tonic area, that key area. So listen to these intervals. That's a 6th. 10th, 10th, 10th. Well, let me play the other notes so you can hear this. 10th, 6th, 10th, 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 6th, 10th, 10th, 6th. See, the first time he ended on the 10th, the second time he ended on the 6th. And that happens for the entire piece. I was really quite amazed when I found that as a consistent pattern, one of the many consistent patterns that he's using in constructing this piece. Now I'm going to show you what I'm looking at. A brand new engraving here on the 11-inch by 17-inch wide horizontal landscape format. You see a lot of colors here. You get these colors. Your version, which you will learn when you learn the notes of the piece in the big 2-page main file, looks like this. Let's just feast your eyes on this, because with this edition, this engraving, I was able to get the complete 4-measure subject on one uninterrupted line. Now, other editions can get this piece on 2 pages, but they can't get the full 4 measures on one line. And that's a huge plus, because now we can look and see with our opening subject, 1, 2, 3, 4 measures, that's all the soprano subject, and the bass with the counter subject, as I said, after the first punctuating quarter notes of beats 1 and 2, from here on, it's non-stop 16th notes of the counter subject. Now see, on our system 2 here, this is system 1, 2, 3, and 4. System 2, with the inverted parts, now all the 16th notes are on the top for the right hand. Then it inverts one more time, 16th notes on the left hand, 16 notes on the right hand, and do you know that he does that pretty much for the rest of the piece too? It's really quite amazing. It's so much fun to play with that counter subject that is just all over the place with these intervals. Let's do this one more time with the counter subject of the opening. Tried to do here is to articulate with very curved and tapping fingers here, sort of harpsichord style, those pitches of yada-da-da-dum, 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 because I find that musical to do it that way, rather than yada-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and all the same. It's not, I don't think it's quite as beautiful. Can't you just see a cellist playing that, or a singer? We just want to remember that even though we have a percussive instrument here with the modern day piano and the harpsichord, we are still first and foremost vocal instruments. We are singing, and we have to transcend the limitations of this instrument and put the singing quality that any other instrument would give it, and that comes from the breath. So when you hear the phrase and can sing it, maybe little breaths in between like that, possibly. Now going on, the second system, B flat major. This is the first time we hear the full 4-measure counter subject, because the first time, this was also really interesting to me. With these these quarter notes here at the beginning, we don't have non-stop, we don't have 16 16th notes in measure 1, but measure 5 we do. So now we get to hear the template of how all the other counter subjects begin in that first measure. And this is what they do. Not only does the part B announce the tonic with the broken octave, but so does beat 3 of the first measure. And here it is in measure 5. Here are the beats of the counter subject. 1, 2, 3, right there. 4, 1, next measure, 2, 7th. Those are your key intervals, this octave and the 7th, and then the octave. Here's part B, octave. What's that A flat doing there? It's taking you back, because B flat major does not have an A flat, but E flat major does, and that's we know he's going to modulate and take us back to the original tonic. And this is how he does it in measure 7. Right there. Now, I like to hear these as waves. So it's not only with this sort of martellato, but it's also lyrical. Oh, it's just beautiful writing. And then he comes and we start our first sequence. A sequence is just a pattern that repeats stepwise up or stepwise down. And it's always modulatory. So he's taking this in measure 9 as our first 3-measure sequence. Where is that from? Well, it's from measure 1. To C minor, which is the relative minor of E flat major. The counter subject right here, measure 9 of our first sequence, is also taken from measure 1. Now this measure 11, he does something different. See if you can hear what he's doing. Those steps. He's outlining the scale degrees in the descending C minor pattern because that's where we're going. He's modulating. It's fantastic here how he's doing. So if I put the hands together in measure 9 to listen to the sequence, that's the interval of the 6th. He's modulating. He's already out of E flat major. He doesn't do that, does he? He does. Ending on a 10th. And same thing now for the bass. You know what? This is the first time it comes in a minor key. And I'm going to show you now the rest of your chart package. Not only do you get the 2-page main file to learn your notes, you get a black and white satellite view, which shows the entire piece in 1 page here on the vertical 11 by 17 axis. And then you get my very favorite part of all, the color satellite structural analysis. And this is where I find I get my entire head around the piece of how everything is constructed. And there is a lot on this 1 page. I'd like to show you what is on here. You have your color coding, the subject in red and the counter subject in blue. Your opening 2 measures are the part A, and here's the part B. It's marked for you. The part B shows the ascending 4th in the subject. Here's the counter subject, always in blue, with the ascending octave. Right here is that broken triad, and it modulates at the end of the measure here to the dominant. So on the left-hand side are all your key areas, and look at all the places he's taking us. He takes the tonic of E flat, and then he takes the dominant of that, which is B flat. Then he modulates back home to E flat. Each hand, each voice got to be on top once. soprano got to have the red here, and then the bass got to get it here. Then we have the 3-measure sequence, which I put in a yellow box. And it's an ascending sequence built and modulates to the relative minor, C minor. Now we get a pair of minor keys. We have C minor and F minor. That's a fifth relationship. And what he does here now, what do you see about the colors of these two systems as opposed to these two? It's absolutely the opposite. The red lines are in the middle here. The red lines are on the outside here. Isn't that a powerful visual of what's going on with the actual parts? One picture's worth 1,000 words, and there it is. So everything is exactly the same. Here's your part B. Whenever the counter subject's on top, that's that broken octave. When the subject's on the bottom, it's the rising fourth. Modulates here in C minor with dominant 7 chord to F minor, which it does. And then it does the same thing again, and this 5/7 chord modulates to B flat minor. Isn't that fantastic how he's going through these fifths and how the patterns change? Up a fourth, up an octave. This is just the opposite, up the octave, up the fourth. Now what I found really interesting on this is playing this line in E flat major and playing this line in F minor. They are just a step away from each other. It's really, really wonderful, and I'm going to show you right now what I like to do on this, because knowing that there is actually such repetition of material, our part B. On the first line in E flat major, and then on the F minor, do you see? Exactly the same. Then we could take the reverse of that when we have the subject in the bass. Or we have when it goes to the C minor. It's beautiful, isn't it? And I recommend doing that, to go back and forth and back and forth with these different 4-measure phrases. Be able to start at the beginning of each one of these systems, because that's where the new subject and counter subject begins. It is so interesting to see the intervals that they play and which is the subject and which is the counter subject, and memorize that as part of your memory work. You'll be amazed how that changes how you play the piece. Then after we've had the 2 alternations of the reds on the outside and the reds on the middle, we get one more 3-measure sequence in B flat minor, this time a descending sequence, and then he does something so spectacular. He switches it up, and I'm going to save the rest of this structural analysis for when we get to that point in the lesson. So let's take now this first sequence in measure 9 as written. We're back to E flat major. See, I can start right there. A flat, B flat, D. Now I'm in C minor with this 10th. Part B. Modulate F minor. Now my subject's on the top. Part B. 10th. Second sequence. Now this is really exciting because it goes down to A flat, and down a step to G, and F. So each of those measures are outlining what? The scale degrees of the next key area, F minor. So do you see what he's done here? He's taken the same idea that he did at the end of the first sequence with this, but here he's doing one keynote per measure, but it's the same idea. When we have the counter subject here now with this second sequence, Bach is doing something what I find absolutely remarkable. He's taking, instead of the octave that we have in measure 1, he's taking the 7th of what we have in the next measure of, this is so beautiful. Let me show you where that you could see more clearly. Excuse me. What I'm looking at here is this, when we had, here's our page 2 by the way, it always starts with your F minor. If I hold this up like this, this is what your structural analysis is giving you. It's just really, I still just can't get over that you can write a piece like this and that it works. So here are our 2 major pairs, E flat, B flat, and here are our 2 minor pairs, C minor, F minor. So with that last repetition of pairs of subject and counter subject, Bach liked so much what he did in measure 2 here that he used it for the next sequence of counter subject material. I found that absolutely stunning that he was doing that. Let me play that counter subject of the F minor counter subject, measure 16. That's the first measure. Here's the second measure. What these 2 measures are. I just played together this and that from the left hand and that from the right. You see? That's the relationship here. That's where he got this idea from, right there. Now what happens emotionally when we get that? All of a sudden now a new kind of energy and emotion comes into this otherwise very driving and non-stop mood of a piece. Listen to this counter subject, how all of a sudden, with this rising 7th, drops down a step. I find pathos in that. Here in the F minor of measure 23, for the first time, the beginning of a system begins with the same note, the F in the bass and the F in the soprano. And look how far apart they are. 1 octave, 2 octaves, 3 octaves. Such a vast distance. And the emotion that we just heard, that I feel when I play the last sequence, is a little bit lonely sounding, maybe a little austere. And I like to play this as a dialogue. direction of the lines. How the bass, even though it is a descending sequence, the lines are going up. Listen to this direction of the lines here. This is so important to follow this and be aware of it. Coming together. The slow practice is really essential to hear all of these beautiful, tiny details. You know, there's a quote, Nabokov says that the joy is in the detail. And I couldn't agree with that more. I consider it a really great day if I have discovered 3 new things in a practice session. That's a home run day. And every day, imagine discovering 3 new things about a piece that you seriously wanted to learn, and you found them. Just imagine how many discoveries you'll have at the end of a half a year, or a year, or 2. I've been playing this piece for 2 years now, and I think I'm starting to understand it. Let's play this one more time. It's too beautiful to leave it without playing it again. 10th, even the 10th, and down the octave. F minor. Now we have a counter subject that is the longest number of 2 steps so far in the piece. Listen to this counter subject and measure 23. Now I have to jump up this far, a 12th. And finally I get that 7th. He's changing it up now. The next, and that was just the part A. With our usual part A's, remember we had the broken octave and then the broken 7th, and then finally part B got the broken octave again. That's the normal pattern. He's bypassing that pattern now because everything is changing at this point in the piece. He is delaying the appearance of the part B. He's giving 3 part A's in a row. Let me show you with the structural analysis. This is so divine to look at this. Oh, I was able to get 9 systems on this, and I was able to split this last 2 measures to show this relationship. 2 measures of a part A for the soprano subject, no part B. 2 measures now for the bass in the part A, and another 2 measures for the soprano, the part A. He changed it for the first time in the piece. Look at the beautiful swap of colors, the blue, the top blue and the bottom blue. And at this one, we are really back home again. And then we have an extended part B, 1 more measure. He is saving for the thrilling conclusion of the piece because he's giving an expanded 9th in the subject. So now let's see how he does that. Where now I'm going to play just the subjects of the 3 part A's in a row. And that's why I divided the piece into a part A and a part B, because of this part right now in the piece. So here we are. We are F minor. Isn't that contrary motion going on there? That was neat. Now, sounds like E flat major. Now here's the real surprise. Listen. He is giving identical part A's. First for the left hand and then for the right hand. Listen, I'm going to do this again. This is just starting with, actually, let's do that measure 23 again so you can hear how he gets into it. Here's the first one. For the right hand. Now here's for the left hand. Now here's for the right hand. And that is exactly the place that we started the piece on. It's identical. This, and this is another reason I like to be able, I can pivot these loose leaves around, and you can see this starting material in measure 1 is just like this material right here in measure 27. I mean, really, note for note. Now the counter subjects, like I said, are a little bit different. Let's do those now. Measure 23, here's our part A, a departure. Part A, counter subject, 6th, 3rd, 7th, counter subject as we know it. Octave, 7th. Now here's part B, and listen to this. If that isn't the most exciting ending, it's so long. We've got those, we have 16 notes times 3, and that's how many you have to, well, more than that even. The left hand starts right here in measure 27 with the first part A, 2 measures, and then the lengthened 3 part B. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 measures, 16 notes times 5. You figure out how many that is. That's a lot of notes. Now, why I'm even mentioning that as an issue is because I'll give you the analogy here. I have a very special relationship with stairs, and it's not a good one. I have fallen 3 times in my life on stairs, and one time I think I almost, it could have been fatal. I just, I missed the landing, and I wasn't paying attention. And so now I pay attention religiously when I go up and down stairs, and I actually count them. Well, this is like that. And the more stairs you've got to climb and before you get to the top, the more you have to focus and pay attention. That's been my experience, and in this music, it's the same idea. That's the metaphor I like to use. With that many 16th notes, without a break. You have to focus on every one of them. Octave, 7th, 4th, 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 7th. Now, part A. Here's recapitulation. Here's part B. Now here it is. The 9th. There is that broken triad. That's just gorgeous writing. Let's do that with hands together here. The last statements of part A and part B, back in our home key. Thrilling, you know that trill at the end there. It's just it's like a singer. Yeah. Sorry, my vibrato isn't as nice as I would have liked, but can you hear the soprano there? Just the perfect vibrato to close the piece, is shimmering with vitality on that tonic, both hands ending on the E flat. So one of the things that I did in learning this piece is I made it into a duet, basically. I isolated all the subjects and played the entire piece through for memory with just the subjects. And then I did for memory the entire piece with just counter subjects. And it was just a remarkable learning experience for me. And I recommend that you do that too when you're learning this piece and practicing it. The other thing I did is I worked with the metronome to be sure that everything was really even. This is a grid type piece. On the grid with all those 16th notes, there isn't a lot of rubato in this piece, except possibly in the second sequence, and even there it's at the very minimal possible, just to give the little bit of the sighing of those sevenths. But otherwise, this is a straight metronomically a steady piece. And I know Bach is supposed to be steady in general, but this one particularly, be sure that you work with the metronome. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I've really enjoyed sharing this with you. And I don't think I told you where you can get your chart. It's from my website, sallychristianmusic.com. They're digital downloads, and you just take your PDFs to the printer store and print these out on cardstock, 60-pound cardstock. You can print as many as you like, and they'll last forever. And they fit nicely together. This doesn't take up that much space, the 11 by 17. So I wanted to close with one thing. In life is not measured by the number of breaths you take, but by how many times your breath is taken away. And that is kind of how I feel about this piece. I can't believe what he's done. And when I think, oh my gosh, how did he do that? Oh my, each time my breath is taken away. Thank you so much. Please learn the piece. You'll love it. You'll have so much fun playing it. And I wish you well with it. And thank you for going on the journey today with me on Bach Invention number 5 in E flat.